30. Do we have confirmation that the live feed is working before we get started?
Brian, Andrew, can you guys type in if we're broadcasting now? We are live. There we go.
Okay, thank you. All right, welcome, Brian. I see you joined in too, and we're just going to get started. All right, welcome everyone to Lakeshore's regular Board of Education meeting, February 22nd, 2021. If you will stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and Ms. Munger, can we get a roll call, please?
All are present.
All right, thank you. And we are on to agenda item number 4, which is audience participation. And our first participant will be Mr. Shaheen. Mr. Shaheen, of course, I know you know the routine, but please state your name and address, please.
Mr. Shaheen, if you are one of the numbers dialed in, it looks like you will have to press *6 to unmute yourself from within the meet.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Thank you. We can.
Okay, here we go. I have several letters to read. I'm supposed to be at the first and the end of the meeting, so I'll go as far as I can for the first 5 minutes.
Okay.
I am very concerned about combining cohorts and having students return to the building 4 days a week. It will not be possible to adhere to the strict safety protocols we have successfully put in place with our current hybrid plans. Parents were assured of these precautions before they selected what their child's school year would look like. Now, we may be getting rid of these protocols completely. Although more and more staff are receiving vaccines, our students' families likely have not received their vaccinations yet, and this 4-day-a-week plan could jeopardize their health. The constant schedule changes are exhausting and confusing for everyone involved, but potentially harmful and detrimental to students. Children thrive on consistency and regularity, and this year has been anything but consistent. With about 3 months left in the school year, it may be beneficial to continue 2 days a week and do everything we can to protect the health of our community in order to return to a normal school year in September. Next letter. I am 100% on board with the proposed plan. Almost every move made by the district this year has been careful, well thought out, and well executed. It is time to make this move. With decreasing cases, increased teacher vaccination, and thoughtful safety measures in place, the positives outweigh the negatives. While it is pointless to focus on students being behind according to arbitrary standards, our secondary hybrid students need the consistency of more in-person school as long as it is safe to do so. No solution is perfect this year, nor will anything please everybody, but this next phase is very reasonable, and I fully endorse it. Next letter. My concern is the schedule. I have school-age children in another district. They are on a completely different schedule than I am, what makes it difficult. I wish that all Macomb County schools were doing the same thing. I know I am not the only staff member with children, and I want our board to understand that changes in one schedule affect more than just me. It's my kids and caretakers. Next letter. Dear Board of Education, we teachers have a few concerns moving forward with full face-to-face. The plan does not address any safety protocols that may need to be updated with full class sizes. It does not follow the latest CDC recommendations that we have followed since September. Currently, it states 6 feet distance, which will be impossible in classrooms and cafeteria. We understand that numbers are down in the county, but we also have had a very strict and safe plan in place, and now we're asking to change our environment. If it's safe to return, why isn't busing being provided to families again? Are parents aware of the changes in social distancing in the classroom, how it will look, and how quarantining will be very different now that we are forced to be so close in the classrooms? What will the procedure be for the students who are quarantined? Who will provide their learning experience when the teacher will be teaching face-to-face daily? Thanks for listening to our concerns. Should I go on with one more?
Yes, please.
Okay. First, I would like to thank my fellow teachers, both in person and virtual, who for the past year have met the challenges of this global pandemic with courage and determination. One of the greatest challenges and fears of us as in-person teachers is the possibility of contracting the COVID-19 virus directly from our work. The challenge is constantly taking precautions to minimize infections. The fear is literally sickness and death. Part of the district plan is to get all staff who want the COVID-19 vaccine to be immunized. Currently, all Lakeshore employees can schedule to be immunized on February 27th and March 27th for the first and second doses of the vaccine. New information shows that the vaccine can be up to 80% effective after 2 weeks and most effective 2 to 4 weeks after the second dose. With that being said, staff will be fully immunized against infection by April 27th. Even taking the lesser time frame of 2 weeks after the second dose, the date to return with increased class size would be the week after the already scheduled spring break, April 12th. It is everyone's goal to bring back students and teachers to full-time in-person instruction. Even the Board of Education meetings will eventually come back in person and not continue to be virtual to provide for your safety and ours. Nothing is guaranteed to be 100% effective. However, I believe we, the teachers and staff of Lakeshore Public Schools, deserve the peace of mind knowing we are the most prepared we can be to protect ourselves and the community. I have 3 more. They're more lengthy. Should I wait till the end of the meeting for those?
Okay, we will come back to you. Thank you, Mr.
All right.
Sheehan.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Maniacci?
Yes, I'm here. Yep.
Okay, so if you just start with your name and address, please.
Yes, Justin Maniacci, 21627 Raymond Street.
Okay.
Okay.
In 5 minutes, go ahead, please.
Okay, so I would just want to say thank you to the board and to Dr. DePonio for hearing the parents today. Really appreciate it under the circumstances. You're hearing our serious concerns. I would first like to say that I really believe our kids need to attend 5 days a week. This is moving much too slow. My 9th grader and 7th grader are telling me they're learning nothing. And all of you are aware of this is a tremendous burden on us parents as we cannot provide what this great school district in Lakeshore has to offer them. The best available evidence indicates that children become infected with COVID. They are far less likely to suffer severe symptoms. At the same time, the harms attributed to closed schools on the social, emotional, and behavioral health, economic well-being, and academic achievement of children in both the short and long term are well known and significant. This must stop today as our children's overall well-being is suffering. Aside from a children's home, no other setting has more influence on a child's health, well-being than their school. The in-person school environment provides educational instruction. It supports the development of social and emotional skills, creates a safe environment for learning, addresses nutritional needs, and facilitates physical activity. The parents' consensus of the people that myself and my family speak to in the district is that we need to go back to in-person school immediately. Children are socializing with each other regardless of having school or not. The benefits of attending school far outweigh the risks. I understand the tremendous responsibility that all the board and the superintendent have as administrators. However, the decision to slowly move to in-person learning, we have to make an abrupt decision and they need to go back full-time. Please think about the effect of them not being in school full-time is going to have on them in the long term. The current model is not educating my children and preparing them for a bright future. Thank you, all of you, for your efforts under the serious circumstances that are going on with this pandemic. And I really appreciate you having a deep thought about what's going on and what's the best decision today. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for being willing to speak up, Mr. Maniacci. We appreciate it. All right. I believe we have another respondent in the middle here. I don't have the name of that person. So our next speaker, if we can introduce name and address, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, we can. Thank you.
Okay, this is Michael Sprite. I am at 1642 Anita, that's Grosse Pointe Woods, and I'm a world history teacher at Lakeshore High School and also the LSFT vice president. Greetings to the Board of Education, Ms. Weinkoop, Mr. Basile, Dr. Lewis, and Dr. DePonio. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to my comment. First off, I'd like to commend Lakeshore's administrative team for helping to navigate us through this pandemic year. Their flexibility and accommodations have certainly been appreciated by the staff. I've had the opportunity to share stories with stewards from other districts and can say that not all have been so fortunate. However, I am here tonight to express my concern with the choice of March 9th to combine the cohorts as part of the district's return to learn plan. I do not feel that this date is either safe nor prudent. Based on the latest district survey, over 30% of staff members are either waiting to get their first vaccination or still trying to get an appointment. I'm extremely appreciative that the district was recently able to secure a time and place through Ascension for those staff members who are still struggling to make this appointment. Anyone who has been eligible for a vaccination will know how difficult it is to find open spots. However, the date for the second dose for the Ascension appointments will be on March 27th, over 2 weeks after the combining of the cohorts. This potentially puts staff members at an increased risk of exposure. I'm curious to why March 9th was chosen to increase the number of students in the classroom. I believe that data, in this case, staff vaccinations, should be a primary component of determining a date that is safe for the frontline workers of this district. There are many teachers that chose to work face-to-face in the classroom based on the district's decision to reduce class sizes to accommodate social distancing. Putting them into a full classroom before that they've had the full opportunity to receive both vaccination schedules is rash and just imprudent. Everyone, especially teachers, agree that more time in the classroom is what's best for kids. I'm not here to argue that we should perpetually maintain an abbreviated schedule. All of you on this distinguished board have either had children within the district or have been a student, so you know that the teachers work hard to create the best environment and education for our students. In many cases, getting back to normal schedule will simplify and ease some of the hurdles that teachers struggle with to provide a decent education during the pandemic. Lakeshore has already done so much to create a safe environment for its staff and students. We've made it this far together, and I'd hate to see us drop the ball so close to the end zone. I believe that a short postponement to the return to learn plan would guarantee that every staff member who wants a vaccination will have had the opportunity to receive one. Thank you again for listening and your service to the district.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sprite. And I apologize. I did expect you to speak tonight. I just thought when we had Mr. Shaheen returning, I thought maybe he was speaking on behalf of your topic. So I apologize. I was expecting you, and thank you for expressing your opinions with the board.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Shaheen, we can come back to you, please.
Okay, here we go.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm writing today to express my concerns about the administration's current proposal to combine cohorts and increase the number of close contacts within our school. Since the beginning of this unprecedented period in education, Lakeshore Public Schools has focused on supporting the mental health and well-being of our students, staff, and community members. Extraordinary efforts have been made to make sure our school community feels supported and secure in whatever individual circumstances they are experiencing. Our staff has worked tirelessly and creatively to support student academic needs and to continue instruction. Throughout the summer, staff, community members, and administrators worked together to create an intensive plan that would keep our schools as safe as possible. Many social distancing measures, cleaning schedules, and safety precautions were implemented. As a teacher and employee, these efforts made me feel heard, understood, and valued. Lakeshore has made every right decision so far to support our students, staff, and community, while still providing the exceptional education we have become known for. We are now at a turning point. With the proposed move to combine cohorts, many have concerns about this change. It seems that now our opinions and concerns for personal safety and even CDC recommendations are not being heard. Macomb County's guidelines show that hybrid method of instruction is optimal. Students of all ages are recommended to participate in hybrid instruction based on CDC guidelines. This is what we have been doing all year. So why would we change our plan now? By combining cohorts, the 6 feet of social distancing recommended by the CDC will no longer be possible in some classes. Staff members have been told to try for at least 3 to 4 feet between students. If you've ever been around children, you understand that keeping space between them is very challenging. Staff members were originally given the choice to work remotely or in person, and those requests were granted. By combining cohorts and changing the schedules, several virtual staff members will be forced to return to in-person instruction. This one is very personal for me because I will be forced to enroll my own children in standard in-person instruction. This change will bring new challenges to my family dynamics. I ask that you really consider whether now is the right time for Lakeshore to combine cohorts when we are on the cusp of beating the pandemic. Is now the time to send our students into a more precarious situation? I see negative effects on staff morale. My colleagues and my friends, who I value as the hardest working and most caring educators you can ever hope to find, are feeling burned out, undervalued, and disposable. I have had teachers tell me that they are ready to leave teaching for good. Asking the teachers to put their personal safety at risk and forcing them to participate in standard-sized classes is finally too much for them. By bringing more students back into buildings, we will increase the number of close contacts. With the variants and unknown long-term effects of this virus, is now the time to defy science and CDC guidelines and put our kids together? Lakeshore has made every move right so far, and I have faith that this message of concern is heard and we can continue on the safe path. Next letter. Dear school board members, let me begin by saying that I'm proud to say that I am a Lakeshore teacher. There are so many things that I think make this school a great one. I think everyone wants to get back to normal. There may be no one who wants that more than the classroom teachers do. Personally, I miss seeing my students more. I miss students working closely in groups and supporting each other in their learning. And I miss seeing the full faces of my students. Although I want normalcy more than almost anything else, I want this to happen safely. After reading the new CDC guidelines, it seems like Lakeshore is doing everything right. In our current system, we are able to keep students socially distanced at times the recommended amount. I am proud of how we have handled this. The new plan does not make me proud. In fact, it makes me worried. I am concerned about my students' well-being as well as that of my coworkers. The proposed date of combining cohorts mean that many of my colleagues will not be fully vaccinated that want to be. It also means that none of my students will be. This is worrisome since there will now be up to 32 kids sitting in close proximity to one another. At the high school, that means they will be doing so for up to 6 different classrooms and lunch. That is a lot of opportunity for exposure. Another concern of combining cohorts is that teachers who have smaller rooms but larger classes will be teaching in other classrooms during those hours. This means a lot more movement, potential confusion, and exposure to different groups they would not be exposed to otherwise. In addition, this change will make it impossible to follow CDC guidelines that we are currently able to follow. I hope that you take my concerns and those of my colleagues, the community, and my students into account before you make the decision. And the last letter. Sorry, I have to take a drink of water. Okay. During the summer, committees were put together to help create our return to learning plan. These committees were made up of administration, teachers, parents, and support staff. Within these committees, we were able to see all sides of the situation and come up with what we thought were solid recommendations for our fall return. When the discussion came about combining cohorts, the committees began to meet again. Then, without notice or communications, the committees stopped meeting and all the recommendations were remade by building committees. Many of us that were on the original committees did not attend the building committees because we were not informed they would be taking over the responsibility. Many of us thought it was something the principals were doing on top of the district committees and did not have the time to join another committee. Come to find out, this was just a movement of responsibility without telling those who were a part of the original plan. While not necessarily intentional, it seemed as if the committees changed intentionally to confuse and remove those who were on the original committees, thus allowing new regulations and recommendations that did not align with the original committees that worked over the summer. In conjunction with this, there are some very real concerns about the combining cohorts for 2 major reasons: the new CDC guidelines and the mental health of our teachers. First, the new CDC guidelines, which are updated February 12th, states, schools providing in-person instruction should prioritize 2 mitigation strategies. Universal and correct use of masks should be required at all levels of community transmission. Physical distancing at least 6 feet should be maximized to the greatest extent possible in hybrid instruction. Scheduling should be planned to ensure physical distancing. The combining of cohorts would not allow for the second of these 2 mitigation strategies. While some classrooms will be able to follow these guidelines, a majority will be unable to provide at least 6 feet of distance for students and staff. Currently using these recommendations and the COVID map for Michigan's cases per 100,000, we are in the orange group, which says elementary schools in hybrid learning mode or reduced attendance, physical distancing of 6 feet or more is required. Middle and high schools in hybrid learning mode or reduced attendance, physical distancing of 6 more feet is required. While these issues should be enough reason to pause the combining of cohorts, there is still the problem with the mental health and safety, not only of our educators, but all those that work in our schools. Teachers in this district are at their breaking point, not only physically, but mentally. The constant change combined with the expectation that we will just find a way to make it work needs to stop. We are surviving a pandemic, the likes of which none of us have ever seen. We worry not only about the health of our students, but of our family members that are at risk during this time. No teacher should be asked to choose between their job and seeing their loved ones. We have not all had the opportunity to be vaccinated and are afraid of bringing home a deadly disease to our loved ones. The amount of stress that teachers have been put under will only increase with this combination of cohorts, leading to eventual breakdown, potential early retirements, or even worse, leaving the profession altogether. Thank you very much. That's the end of the letters from our staff. We appreciate the time you've given us.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Shaheen. We appreciate hearing from you. All right. We're going to move to Superintendent's Report, agenda item number 5, Dr. DePonio.
I think we might have one more person on there. A phone number that ending in 85. I'm not sure if that's Shannon. Did we have another person signed up to speak?
We did have an additional person signed up to speak. We had Rusty Arnold who was signed up to speak.
Okay.
Rusty Arnold is he's trying to speak right now. This is parent Justin Maniacci. I'm a friend of his. He's trying to get in right now. He's registered. Apologize for interrupting. Just want to let you know he is trying to get through to speak. Thank you.
I appreciate that, and we'll give him a minute to do that. Shannon and Joe, I haven't seen anything pop up yet, but if you see anything different, let me know, okay? We're going to give it a little bit more time. Mr. Maniacci, if you happen to be texting with him or anything and you can give us an update, feel free to jump in and share whatever you may know as we try to give him time to connect.
I just tried to three-way call him. He didn't answer, so I don't know what's going on. I apologize.
Yep.
Okay.
And no one has contacted the tech department there.
Okay. All right, we're going to give another minute before we go on. All right, I'm not sure what's going on there, but we will go ahead and move on with Dr. DePonio. We'll watch to see if a call jumps in and maybe we can circle back. We'll kind of play it by ear here and see what happens. Okay, so agenda item number 5, Dr. DePonio, please.
Thank you. I will just kind of bring the board up to speed on a variety of items. Of course, our biggest agenda item this evening is a recommendation to combine cohorts and move to 4 days a week for in-person instruction, maintaining the Mondays and the shortened schedule to accommodate the virtual learning that Lakeshore has embraced, rather than sending that work out for a third party, and also to provide time for our staff to touch base with quarantined students and students that are absent. And at first, to talk a little bit about where we are as a county in terms of transmission. I'm happy to report, and I'm sure all of you are well aware that our cases in the county are at perhaps an all-time low in terms of what we've seen since this has begun. And I think it's important that everyone understand that when there's a presence of COVID-19 in the county, there's going to be a presence at some point in our schools. And the higher that we have a presence in the county, the greater chance there is of that presence occurring within the schools. We've heard a variety of reports, and I've reported to the board before that studies that have been done to this point. And of course, this is an evolving body of work, so we learn more and more every day. But we rely on the CDC, we rely on Macomb County Health Department, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, to continually provide us with updates as to the level of risk that we face by having in-person instruction. And so right now, according to the CDC, we are at the blue level, which is the lowest level of risk for Macomb County. And under this, they move, of course, mitigation strategies are recommended at all times with, a respiratory virus that's transmissible like COVID-19. So wearing a mask, social distancing, washing of hands, cleaning of surfaces, all of those things that schools have been very, very good at, not just Lakeshore, schools in general have provided an exceptionally safe space for kids to learn. And what we've seen is that that 6 foot social distancing, which really is the crux of tonight's discussion. What sort of impact does that have on the transmission of COVID? At a time in November when we saw cases at an exceptionally high rate, you would expect that the closer that people are, the more transmission would occur. And of course, we saw that at Lakeshore Public Schools. We saw that in Macomb County, and we saw that within the state of Michigan, and of course, throughout the United States. But the interesting fact, and of course, I've shared this with the board, is that for districts that have not cohorted students, that have had these hybrid, they did not have hybrid courses, they had less stringent social distancing, the rate of transmission and their infection rate is similar as Lakeshore Public Schools was. And of course, that was one of the earliest reasons that we have moved towards this recommendation. Of course, the main reason is that cases are significantly low, and we measure that risk versus the reward of in-person instruction. So taking a quick look at where we're at as a county. First, just really quick, once again, and this is very similar to what I shared previously. This is where we started the school year, and just last week we were looking at 24 cases for Macomb County, and it's continued to drop since that peak of November the 26th, when we had over 1,100 cases within the county. We see, a continual drop, a risk level of A, which is only slightly below the lower risk level, which is low. So there's low, A, B, C, D, and E. And so we are, in terms of positivity, we are at a risk level of A. When it comes to cases per million, we've moved into, again, a low level of risk. And this is when the CDC moved our risk level to blue. It would be nice if the county and the state and the federal government, all use the same, I guess you could call it grading scale, but unfortunately they do not. But as we look at this information, we continue to see consistent days in a lower level of risk when it comes to, again, our risk level for new cases per 100,000. We've been at 18 days and we continue to drop for cases per 100,000. And for percent positive, again, we hover right around 4.5% for percent positive for 14 consecutive days. So this is all good news. And I think when we look at data, when we look at where we're at in terms of risk, this is not something that really can be ignored. I'm gonna hop back here and stop sharing here. Any questions in regards to county rates in the case update?
Can you just restate the part about levels? Did you say there's low followed by A, B, C, and D?
Correct. And we are at level A.
Okay.
Low would be 3% or lower for percent positive. And I think it's less than 50 cases per 100,000 for cases per 100,000.
Okay. I just want to be clear because the word low is something we would just use in a non-descript way or not in an official descriptive way. And I don't want to use that word and imply that I'm speaking on behalf of the county's structure of
originally the discussion with what that category would be deemed was post-pandemic. So in a post-pandemic world, it alludes to, obviously, this idea that we are no longer living in a COVID environment. That verbiage was changed because I think there's an understanding that the idea of being, COVID-free environment might never occur, in our lifetime. So they moved to that risk level of low.
Okay.
Then I had a question regarding the colors. So you're saying we're at a blue, where in letters from the teachers, they were saying we were at an orange. At this time, though, we are in a blue.
So that's another confusing item that has occurred throughout all of this. And again, my understanding of this coming from the weekly briefings that we have, but they've changed the grading scale a number of occasions, which has led to quite a bit of confusion as to where people are at. As you saw in that, those different charts, we still have, and let me switch back over so everyone can see what I'm referring to. So we still have colors. There's red, there's orange, there's yellow, and there's green. And these coincide with items like low, A, B, C, but they don't match up entirely. Different departments are using different colors. So for example, Michigan Department of Health and Human Services and the Macomb County Health Department use these colors. The CDC uses the lowest color of blue as a rating for risk level. So in the risk level that we're in under the CDC, we're under the lowest risk level of transmission, and that's based on percent positive and based on cases per 100,000. If you have more questions, please feel free to hop in. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of cases. We're declining. It's news that we should be rejoicing in. In spite of that, I know that no matter where we go or what we do, there's certain risk that's involved with coming into contact with other people. Because one, we're dealing with a virus that is, you can be asymptomatic, that you don't have to present symptoms to demonstrate that you are infected with this. And so in the randomness with which COVID seems to have an impact on people, all of this, I think, leads to a level of concern that people continue to have. And that's why from the start of this, we've focused on numbers and recommendations from, again, the CDC, Macomb County Health Department, and where we're at is a much better place. Looking at the days after Thanksgiving break and in between Thanksgiving and Christmas. We were one of a few districts that were in session. We did that solely based on the presence of COVID-19 in our community. It was low, transmission was low, and we successfully made it through those days. And I'm not certain, I'd have to go back and look at our data, but our case level was very, very low during that time. We are now on, I think, 9 consecutive days of not having a case that is reportable, which means cases that involve students that were in a hybrid position that could have potentially impacted others, students or staff, that could have impacted others within the school setting. And we haven't had that again since the start of the school year. I'm not trying to sell anyone on anything here. I'm presenting the board with the facts regarding where we're at in terms of the presence of COVID in Lakeshore Public Schools. And so with that recommendation to combine cohorts, certainly the availability of vaccinations for our staff was a great concern. She wouldn't want me to provide her with credit on this particular item, but Shannon was able to connect Lakeshore Public Schools with Ascension Healthcare. And as has been mentioned, we will have a vaccination clinic that will occur this Saturday for our staff. So any staff member that wants to be vaccinated is able to get vaccinated. The concern about being able to get an appointment is something that no longer exists. We also received notice from the city of St. Clair Shores today that they will be providing a vaccination clinic at I think it's the senior center over the weekend for all persons that are a part of that 1B. So 65 or older, frontline workers. These are people that will be able to receive vaccination through the city as well. And so we'll put that information out to our families because we know that either parents or grandparents might have an opportunity to access that vaccination. So we're optimistic at the factors that are leading up to where we are currently at. There was also a study that was recently published in the New England Journal of Medicine that talked about the efficacy rate of vaccinations after the first dose. And so, the dosage, and you get your first dose and then you got to wait a little while and you get your second dose. And it was all based on this premise, or is all based on this premise and the science that you need the 2 doses to have a efficacy rate of 95%. So essentially, you're 95% protected from serious illness when it comes to COVID. It's not a matter of whether or not you get it. You could still get it, but just like the flu shot lessens the impact that the flu would have on you, vaccination would also lessen the impact that COVID could have on you. But this recent study indicated that after the first dose, 14 days after the first dose, that there's a 92% effectiveness rate, which is a wonderful thing. Again, it's an evolving study. Dr. Fauci, who is obviously the country's leading physician on this pandemic, is still recommending both doses, and I would certainly defer to his expertise on that particular issue. It is reason to give some optimism that one dose can provide a level of protection that we might not have previously thought was possible. And so again, the direction that we're headed, or the recommendation that we're making to the board tonight, is going to be that we combine cohorts. Our building level administrators, working with their staff, have been working through each classroom to space kids out as best as we possibly can. Most class sizes are around 20 to 25 students. We have a handful of classes that are above that. Most of those classes are moved to space where we can spread kids out. So for example, at the high school, there's a classroom that's been converted that can easily fit 31 kids that are still 6 foot socially distanced. And so again, the recommendation by the CDC is, under this current risk level that we are in, that 6 foot social distancing is still done to the extent, best extent possible. It's just good practice, but it shouldn't be prohibitive for in-person instruction if it cannot occur. Obviously there's risk in everything that we do. The closer that we are to other people, it certainly would increase our risk. But given the transmission rate that's occurring in our community right now, that puts us in a very good position. And so when we get to that point for that recommendation, what we would be doing is combining groups A and B. Currently, Group A goes Tuesdays and Thursdays. Group B goes Wednesdays and Fridays. Those students would be combined, and they would go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Again, Mondays would remain virtual, since that's something that we take on ourselves. We have not farmed out to a third party. And we could expect class sizes to be in the range of 20 to 25 students, with social distancing between 3 to 6 feet in each classroom. It is not a good assumption to assume that if you are outside of 6 feet, you're safe, and that if you're inside of 6 feet, that you're not safe. That's simply not the case. We will continue to adhere to the strict mitigation strategies that we've been doing all year long, and obviously evaluate this along the way. Any questions regarding the combining of cohorts? And of course, that will be an agenda item coming up that Rochelle will be speaking on.
Joe, I just had another quick question regarding why March 9th. I thought that was a valid question. Why did we pick March 9th? Obviously, with a little bit of common sense, maybe to wait, like the suggestion of the teachers, till after spring break, after it seems like a good portion of our staff that want to be vaccinated would be vaccinated.
Certainly. Liz, I suppose with everything that we've seen this year, not just with Lakeshore Public Schools, but with every school district trying to navigate its way through this, there is ultimately going to be, down the road, there's going to be second guessing about what were right decisions and what were wrong decisions. And with all of this, our goal has been to provide the most in-person instruction that we can safely do. And so the reason that we have chosen March the 9th, we actually began this work, if we were, we think back to January, we talked at that time about after midwinter break, which was the middle of February, that we wanted to be ready to go with combining of cohorts, because we saw the declining risk level and the declining transmission that's occurring. And so I suppose part of the reason that we are delaying this 2 weeks from tomorrow is, one, to continue to make sure that we've looked through every situation that could possibly occur and try and get kids as spaced out as best we can. And I think we have most of those situations taken care of. 2 weeks ago, the high school had 31 classes that had serious spacing issues. They're down to 2 at this particular point. We're looking at each and every classroom and furniture that is in that classroom and asking ourselves, does the furniture that's taking up square footage take precedence over a child that could sit there? And the obvious question that everyone, or the obvious answer that everyone comes up with is no. A child has priority. We do want to give families some notice. I fully anticipate that if we are to combine cohorts, that there will be family members that will be concerned, and we want to have some time to adjust schedules accordingly. I also anticipate that we would have families that might want to rejoin us. And so while we'll try and accommodate the request as best we can, it's really based on our current second semester numbers that people registered for. And when we registered our students for the second semester, there was in that registration a notice that there was possibility that that during the second semester, because we saw cases declining, that we could potentially be combining cohorts. But in spite of that, when that moment occurs, when we finally say, hey, we're going to combine cohorts, there's going to be people that will have concerns. But we didn't feel that kicking that can down the road past spring break, or what would be the next item, we can do it. And it's just like and I don't want to lessen the seriousness of COVID in any way, shape, or form, but the subjectivity of having a snow day, when does it become too dangerous? When is it safe? I think we're grappling with a similar structure of thought here of safety. And of course, when the CDC says you're at the lowest risk level for transmission in your community, and they use verbiage in regards to social distancing to say extent possible and not mandated, I think the time is right for us to proceed forward. Dan?
I think Kurt had his hand raised before I do.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see Kurt's hand.
No problem. Thank you.
So, Joe, so the CDC, or the vaccine that's coming out, and thank you, Shannon, for getting that so quickly, did you say 92% effective after the first dose?
That's a recent study that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. So again, we're going to see a lot of studies come out, and there will be a variety of analysis of these studies. So that's what I read from the New England Journal of Medicine. It's promising news, but I cannot definitively tell you that's the case, because I didn't participate in that study, nor did they ask me, and they were probably wise not to ask me.
Okay. Do we have an idea on how many kids want to come back to full learning and face-to-face learning?
So our last parent survey that we conducted, 70% of our families supported the combining of cohorts, which would stress that 6-foot social distancing limit. So, it's a strong number of families. There's families that are concerned about it. There's no doubt.
Okay.
What we are trying to do, absent of the emotion, which the emotion is high for all of us in this, is what can we do reasonably and safely and successfully and sustainably, and we believe that this is that very thing.
Okay, and we still have something in place for the kids that want to stay virtual?
Certainly, we continue during this semester to offer 100% virtual option for our families, which is all done by Lakeshore teachers.
Okay. And do we have a good count of how many teachers want the vaccination and are going to get it?
Yeah, so we conducted a survey maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, or I don't know, time kind of runs together. So currently 19% of the staff that responded have received both vaccinations. 40% of staff had received the first vaccination. 23% were scheduled to receive the first vaccination. We have 17% that indicated that they were not interested at this time in being vaccinated.
Okay,
So
in my
we were looking at, by the March 8th date, of approximately 83% of our staff having received the first dose of the vaccination.
good. Okay, my last question. One of the letters was about teachers concerned that have kids in school. Do we have anything in place to help them if we decide to go back to face-to-face?
Kurt, I would need a little bit more information in regards to that. We do, however, continue to offer to our staff free childcare, and we've done that from the onset of this, because obviously without teachers, we can't have a lakeshore, and without students, we can't have a lakeshore. We need both to make this work.
Okay. Okay, and again, thank you, Shannon, for getting that through Ascension. Thank you.
Dan?
Yeah, so thanks, Kurt, and definitely Liz covered some of my questions. I did want you to address a little bit the concern that was raised about virtual teachers that are virtual coming into in-person. The verbiage that was used was being forced. Could you speak to that a little bit and what accommodations might exist? I know you talked about students, but for teachers as well.
Certainly. Dan, I do not know of one teacher that's been forced to make a switch. I just simply don't know who they might be referring to. So, whether that's an error or I'm not aware of that, I don't believe that has occurred. Certainly, if there are staff that they just, for whatever reason, it is a pandemic. There's there has to be grace and understanding with all of this, and that includes grace and understanding for the needs of our students, obviously, as we proceed forward. But if there are staff that have significant concerns, and I've spoken with many that have shared heartbreaking stories of situations that they're living with, we would do everything we can to make accommodations. Included in that, if people need to take some time off until they can get both doses, and that's going to provide them with a greater level of confidence that they're returning and they'll be safe, or they're protecting the safety of loved ones that reside in their home that could be compromised health-wise, then we would certainly do that. From the onset of this, our goal has been to first deal with the humanity of this, and dealing with the humanity means staff members that have significant concerns, students that desperately need our support and our attention, and all the while continuing to try and work to move forward so that we can do what we can safely do under the guidance of the CDC and the Macomb County Health Department.
Thanks, Joe. And then the last question I had was around the point of the committees that was brought up. So I know that we brought back the return to learn committees. Can you address the concerns that were brought up around how that process went, and how or if it was shifted to building committees, and just how the process worked this time?
Certainly. So it absolutely was shifted to each building, because the solutions for what we needed to do were at the building level. The only way that we can solve a high school class overcrowding situation is to have the high school work on that problem. And so we reconvened our committees, and actually I think there's still some work that's taking place with certain groups. But then that work did shift to the building level so that we could dive into what the solutions would be at the grade level of each building and within the classrooms of each building.
Thank you. That's all I had.
I did have one more quick question. It's kind of a monkey wrench. Are we just going to jump into 4 full days? Are we thinking of maybe an ease into it, a week of half days to see how it goes and then go from there? I just don't know if that's an option or just for comfortability. We did it at the beginning when just for the kids and the staff to get adjusted. If that's something going forward to try, the first week be half days and then the second, then go to full days.
So our current recommendation, Liz, is for 4 reduced schedule days, but currently as the schedule still stands. When our students combine, we're still at 50% capacity for the buildings. We have about 50% of our students that are 100% online. But when 50% of our students migrated to the virtual, 50% of our teachers migrated with them. Actually, it's a little bit less than that. But if we had outsourced our virtual learning and kept all of our teachers in seat, we would have 100% of our teachers serving 50% of our students. It's one of those things that we'll second guess. Was that the right thing to do? But then I was in a kindergarten class last week, and seeing what was going on in there, I'm 100% convinced that it was the right thing to do. Our Lakeshore kids are getting great experiences from Lakeshore teachers online. That being said, Liz, our plan at this particular point is for the schedule just as it currently looks, and just combining those 2 groups, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And there's a little bit earlier dismissal times at each building, but not to the extent of half days or anything of that nature.
All right. Anybody else? All right. I will just add a few comments then. Just a couple of things to highlight. Joe, some of your words were risk versus reward. Certainly we were coming at this with a perspective of all of the things that we are trying to balance. And, you mentioned multiple government agencies from our, local county level all the way on up, in district, in our members within the district that we're trying to balance the needs of, being our students and our families and our staff. And so really trying to take all of those factors into account and make a decision that serves the best interest of our people as a whole. And I'm completely aware that every decision we've made through this school year has not completely served each individual that we try to serve. Everybody has their own opinion and expectation and desires and needs, and we have to implement something that gets to apply to the whole district, but takes into account a lot of individual needs. For board members, I just want to throw in, remember the days that we fought for local control. This is what board members want. This is what school districts want. I do think the needs of our community are served best when they are served at the local control level. These aren't easy decisions. Joe, you mentioned rejoicing in the news. We want to rejoice. we do feel that. I do. I am rejoicing that things are getting better and brighter, and and all the successes along the way, the stories of humanity from our local level all the way on up. Like, there's a lot of good, human stories that we're going to look back and really celebrate on. And right now, I just feel like I don't have the luxury to just rejoice in the progress in the moment. We have the responsibility to now fulfill the local control that we've wanted and fought for, really for years and years and years in public education. Lastly, I just want to repeat because it's important words, grace and understanding. We're all going to keep that in mind as we make decisions and move forward and understand that our decisions are going to affect individuals very differently. And it's based on who they are, what their experiences are, you know, a million different factors that make each person unique. And again, with that, our decision will be implemented for our entire district, and it will be done with consistent grace and understanding. So, Joe, thank you so very much for the way that you are leading the district. And I know there was a staff member a while back that voiced some concern about the unavailability of the vaccine. And I think some of that was timing. There's only, you know, when things started to roll out, there was only so much supply at the time. And the demand was instantly high, as I'd like to call it, in the queue, based on how we, the state notified people of when they would be eligible. So I appreciate having heard from some people within the district, and certainly appreciate the district staff in getting this Saturday into motion. So a lot of people to thank for that, and a lot of people that will be thankful for it. So
I actually, that was only a portion of my superintendent's report. I have some other things to report here. I can wait till next month, but it might be insignificant at that point.
No, we'll let you carry on. I just kind of, this particular topic, is the rest of the board okay with, ready to move on? Okay, go ahead, Joe.
All right. Well, you know, Pete's going to get into the budget amendment, and he's worked very hard, and George has worked very, very hard to present a budget to the board that is one that is fiscally responsible, but also significantly addresses what we're dealing with right now. And while, you know, originally the board adopted a significantly deficit budget, with the priority being that that wage increases are something that this board is committed to. You know, you're going to see, and I don't want to, you know, steal anyone's thunder, but you're going to see a budget that has improved significantly as a result of a variety of things, and Pete will get into that. But one of those things that I did want to highlight is, you know, we've set aside a significant amount of dollars to address the learning loss that's taking place here. George is in the process of working with Rochelle, who has done a remarkable job of really highlighting what we need to be doing with our students while they come back to us. So this budget reflects our commitment to doing everything we can to fill the gaps that have occurred here. And not just about, you know, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing, spelling, and that sort of thing, but play, creativity, innovation, a lot of the skills that we were committed to long before this pandemic showed up. So that's a little bit of what's coming up here. I want to certainly make sure that I congratulate our Teachers of the Year. We've announced at 5 of our 6 buildings our 2021 Teachers of the Year, and arguably this could go to every staff member who has worked so hard to make it through this particular time. But particularly distinguishing themselves this year, Noelle Flazar at Masonic Heights, Deb Wilson at Rogers, Ann Lynch at Violet, Jesse Turner at Kennedy Middle School, and Jackie Phillips at Lakeshore High School. And those were recently announced, and we have not yet announced our Teacher of the Year for Northlake High School, but that's going to be coming here shortly. So congratulations to those teachers, and thank you. They're a wonderful representation of all teachers that are out there doing the very best they can to get through a lot of challenging times. And then finally, I know you're going to take up a resolution in regards to you know, administrator week or month or whatever. I don't know how long we get for that. But you know, everybody in education is going through really tough times, and of course that means parents as well. It's not boo-hoo, woe is us. Everyone has had a burden to bear to get through this particular moment in time. But I wouldn't trade the leadership that we have at our building levels and within our departments to get us through this. They've put people first, and I think that's always a first priority that must occur when you're facing challenges of this nature. So a heartfelt thank you to our administrative team for everything we do. So with that, now I'm done, and thank you for the time.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. DePonio. All right. As you can already tell, tonight is quite the agenda. We have a lot of work to do. A lot of conversations already happened. And so anybody that's hanging with us and, you know, listening and attending through the meeting, I appreciate it. There's a lot to be covered tonight. All right. So we're going to move on to agenda item number 6A, which is the resolution recognizing Administrators Week. So I'm going to go through first, and then we'll come back, cycle back for the motion. So I'm looking to have a motion to adopt a resolution recognizing Lakeshore Public Schools administrators for their contributions and efforts to our schools. That would be from March 1st through March 5th of 2021. And our administrative team includes Dr. Joseph DePonio, Superintendent, Dr. George Lewis, Assistant Superintendent of Employee Services, Rochelle Weinkoop, Assistant Superintendent of Academic and Student Services, Pete Basili, Chief Financial Officer, Lori Farr, Director of Special Education Services, Fran Hubert, Director, Technology Department, Wayne Satterfield, Director, Maintenance and Operations, Christina Morris, Director, Food Service, Chartwell, Dr. Jeff Lip, Director, Special Programming, Principal, Northlake High School, Stephen Gaffigan, Assistant Principal, Northlake High School, Janelle Bross, Principal, Lakeshore High School, Todd Stevens, Assistant Principal, Lakeshore High School, Richard Pop, Dean of Students, Lakeshore High School, John Hartley, Athletic Director, Lakeshore High School, Chad Johnson, Principal, Kennedy Middle School, Edward Blair, Assistant Principal, Kennedy Middle School, Matthew Baranka, Principal, Masonic Heights Elementary School, Cindy Sam, Principal, Rogers Elementary School, Joan Grassi, Principal, Violet Elementary School, Rachel Hallendy, Accounting Supervisor, Kelly Biondo, Early Childhood Coordinator, Karen Jones, COVID Liaison, Tasha Candela, Virtual Learning and Digital Media Coordinator, and Shannon Kettlehut, Executive Assistant Superintendent, Board of Education and Strategic Planning. And I really wanted to announce that like an athletic announcer. If I had it in me, I would have, but I'm really missing some athletic events, and I'm super happy to see them starting to get back on our radar. And if I had that voice, I would have done it in that style. So, all right. With that, I would have Mr. Ziegler is actually going to read the resolution for us.
Okay. I have to make this bigger. Hang on. Okay, whereas the success of this nation, state, and community directly depends upon the quality of education our youth receive, and whereas administrators are leaders in creating a culture of family, high expectations, accountability, and vision, and whereas administrators are charged with being instructional and organizational leaders and are key to effective and safe schools and productive classroom learning. And whereas administrators' leadership skills and abilities directly affect the performance of all employees and the relationship between staff and students, the most important factor for the quality learning. And whereas administrators are leaders not only in their schools or departments, but also among parents and members of the community, ensuring that the school and community work together to create effective and quality education for our youth. And whereas administrators contribute their time and their talents through long hours and without fanfare for the betterment of our youth. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Lakeshore Board of Education, on behalf of its students, staff, and community, commends the administrators of the Lakeshore Public Schools, recognizes their invaluable contributions, and encourages all citizens to support their efforts. That's it.
You're still muted, Sharon.
Oh my, there we go.
Ah.
Kept it this time. All right, can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved.
All right, I think I
Support.
heard Mr. Colling and support by Mrs. DeLong. All right, any board members have comment here? All right. Honestly, this is a year like no other. I don't really have the words that are going to carry me through Administrator Week or any other week that we're going to celebrate through this year. You know, frankly, everybody has done their absolute best in just keeping us moving forward and carrying on, and more than that, but doing it in a Lakeshore style that has supported and reinforced, you know, the family atmosphere in our district. So I know people's energies might be running a little bit low, but I certainly appreciate really more than my words can express that, you know, the leadership that this district has had through this most troublesome year. So thank you so very much. All right, Ms. Munger, a roll call vote, please.
Okay, Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mrs. Munger, aye. Mr. Densler,
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle,
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong,
Aye.
Mr. Colling,
Aye.
and Mrs. Thomas August.
Aye.
All right, thank you. We're going to go to agenda item 7A, the consent agenda. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved along.
Motion by Mrs. DeLong,
Colling.
support by Mr. Colling. Anybody with comments or questions? All right, Ms. Munger, a roll call vote.
Mrs. Thomas August,
Aye.
Mr. Densler,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mrs. Munger, aye. Mrs. Bartle,
Aye.
Mr. Colling,
Aye.
and Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
All right. Agenda item 7B, recognition of tenured teacher. Dr. Lewis, please.
Move to approve that Dale Warren, teacher, Lakeshore High School, acquired tenure in compliance with the Michigan Teacher Tenure Act, effective February 1st, 2021.
So moved.
Support.
All right, I believe that was Mr. Densler, followed by Mrs. DeLong. Any discussion? All right, a roll call vote again, please.
Mrs. Bartle,
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong,
Aye.
Mr. Colling,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mrs. Thomas August,
Aye.
Mrs. Munger, aye, and Mr. Densler.
Aye.
All right. Mr. Warren happened to be online with us tonight?
I believe that Dale might be viewing
Viewing?
the board
Okay.
meeting tonight, yes.
All right, well, congratulations goes out for sure. And, you know, 10-year moments are much nicer when we can hand over a certificate and shake a hand and see a happy face. But we appreciate you and congratulate you. All right. Personnel report is item number 7C. Also, Dr. Lewis.
Move that the board approve the following personnel report. AFSCME Local 1217. Move to accept the retirement of Diane Barkley, custodian at Rogers Elementary, retirement effective March 5th, 2021. Diane has been employed with Lakeshore Public Schools for 37 years. Lakeshore Federation of Support Staff move to accept the employment of Lexus Spanik, lunchroom monitor at Violet Elementary, effective February 1st. And the Lakeshore Federation of Teachers, Local 1465, move to accept the employment of Aaron O'Shea, elementary teacher, Violet Elementary, effective February 1st. And Nicole Salem, elementary teacher, Violet Elementary, effective February 1st, 2021.
All right. Thank you. A motion, please.
So moved. Colleen.
Support Ziegler.
All right. Thank you. Any discussion? All right. Roll call vote, please.
One question. Are
Yes.
any of these Lakeshore graduates?
Mr. Ziegler, I'm glad you mentioned that because both Aaron O'Shea and Nicole Salem are Lakeshore High School graduates.
Yeah.
Glad to see that.
Yeah.
All right. Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Munger, aye. Mr. Colling,
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong,
Aye.
Mrs. Thomas August,
Aye.
and Mr. Densler.
Aye.
All right. Now, I believe that we were going to have some in attendance tonight. Did that happen, Mr.
Yes,
Dexter?
once again, I do know that Lexus, Aaron, and Nicole are viewing from home.
Okay. Yeah. I too, Mr. Ziegler, I recognized those names, and it made me reflect on, I know as board members, how we all say what a good moment graduation is when we get to hand over diplomas, but it's an interesting moment when we actually hand over paychecks to our former students. So that's a pretty cool thing. And we are happy to have you. And I know you will serve us well. And we hope that you, learn to love the Lakeshore family in a different capacity. So we're grateful. And Diane Barkley, 37 years. I mean, I really kind of scratched my head. 37 years is a long time. I wish we could be in person and hear a few words from her. And maybe we can do that at another time, but 37 years is pretty remarkable. So we appreciate your years of service, Diane. All right. We're going to move to agenda item 7D, the budget amendment. Mr. Basili.
Okay, so this is a move to amend the proposed 2020-21 operating budgets for all 15 district funds. What I'm going to try to do here is share the screen so that we can start with the general fund. So can everybody see that?
Almost. There we go.
Great. So this is the general fund. It's the main operating fund of the district. And let me just go through the columns here. So the first column is the 2019-2020 actual amounts that were audited by Plant and Moran. The second column is the budget that was approved or adopted back in June for this year. This column is the column we'll be voting on tonight, the February amendment. And column 4 is simply the change between column 3 and column 2. So the revision in the estimate. So this is a budget to budget comparison. It's basically an estimate revision from where we were in June with the various assumptions that we had. Generally, the February amendment is more relevant for revenues. However, this year with all the new funding stimulus bills in the pipeline with more to come, we might have a major change by the time we do our June amendment. And our expenditures, our best estimate as of now, they of course will change somewhat in June. And most of these figures that we'll go through have been deeply affected by the COVID pandemic shutdown. So if we want to look at the big picture here, if we go in our third column here, which is our February amendment, We see here excess of revenues over expenditures is negative 195,000. So basically a net loss of 195,000 is projected at this point. Again, that will change with our June amendment. But as you see here, we had budgeted originally back in June of $1.9 million of a net loss. So the improvement is a huge $1.7 million. Looking at it from a big picture standpoint, there's plenty of revenues and expenditure variances that offset each other. The one biggest reason why we're to the better here is because if you remember back in June of 2020, MDE and the Michigan Department of Treasury had instructed all Michigan school districts to budget for anywhere between a $500 to $700 per student cut in the foundation allowance. Because at that point, revenues at state level and at the federal level looked like they were going to be significantly lower than prior years because of the shutdowns in businesses and so forth. However, when the state did their August revenue estimating conference, they realized that with the huge federal stimulus input that happened during the year, the revenues were about the same as before. So basically what they decided on with the governor and the legislature was to keep the same foundation allowance as we had in 2019-20, which was $8,529 per student. And they threw in an extra $65 one-time supplemental. But if we take the $8,529 versus the $8,029 that we had budgeted for, because we picked the $500, the lower figure, the difference, if you take $500 times our student count from last year, which was 3,432, gets you to about $1.7 million. So that's pretty much the big picture view of where we are with the budget. That'd be the singular biggest reason why we've improved. If we want to look at some line items here, so in our revenues, we see a local source revenue decreased about 249,000 compared to our June estimate. Basically, that's because of our SAC program. Obviously, because of the shutdowns, we've lost fees and tuition from that. Athletics is down significantly, again, because of gate receipts, obviously being pretty much non-existent because of the shutdown. The state source revenue that we just talked about, so we gained 1.7 million. However, there was an offset. We lost 250 students from last year. The one saving grace is that the MDE and the state of Michigan gave us a super blend safe harbor for one time for this year of only being able to realize 25% of the loss. So instead of losing 250 kids, we basically lost 63. But that was only a one-time deal, so we'll have to deal with the ramifications if we continue to have that student figure in the future. But instead of losing $2 million for the 250 students, we only lost $500,000 this year. So if you take the 1.7 million minus the 500,000, it comes out to about the 1.1 or 1.2 million dollars that's here. Federal source revenues are much higher than we budgeted for in June because obviously we didn't know about the huge corona relief funding bill that was going to come down, which was $350 per student, which equates in our situation to $1.2 million. And we also had another $200,000 in technology grants from the Federal CARES Act that came through. So that's why we have such a huge increase in federal source revenue. However, with federal revenue, as you know, we can only recognize revenues to the extent of expenditures. So the net effect of all that revenue is negligible on fund balance. So again, we go back to that $1.7 million being the key for why we're so much better off than we were in June. If we go on the expenditure side, so we go to basic programs, which is basically our costs for elementaries, middle school and high school costs, mostly teacher salaries, purchase services and supplies. We have an increase of 446,000, and it's a little bit to what Joe referred to previously. We invested $500,000 in extra pay compensation for teachers to spend extra time for student learning recovery losses. And that's what is part of the aim of the federal and state stimulus packages coming forth. And that's covered under the Corona relief funding. The added needs portion here, which represents special education costs and our program cost and voc education, was down 423,000, basically a reduction in in-person costs for things such as subs and aides and voc ed materials. Pupil cost, which represent counselors, therapists, and social workers, is up 176,000, mostly due to those 5 certified medical assistants that we hired this year for the building for health and safety reasons related to COVID. Again, that's covered with COVID relief money. School administration, which is our principals' cost for the most part, increased slightly. We had extra day compensation for principals to come in during the summer to prepare their buildings for the anomalous year we were going to have. Operations maintenance is up slightly, 75,000. We had reductions in overtime and other costs. However, we had increases in custodial supplies for COVID and capital outlay for the drinking fountain, the hand-free drinking fountains that we installed throughout the buildings. Transportation is down almost 100,000, self-explanatory due to lower fuel costs, lower overtime, and lower sub costs. Central costs, which is basically our human resource department and technology department, increased 250,000, but that relates to what we just talked about up here with federal source revenue. We got that $200,000 grant from the federal government, so we spent that on distance learning items such as network upgrades, hotspots, and devices. And finally, community service expense was up significantly. That's because we're transferring a lot of the costs from the Shores Child Care Center from adult ed to the general fund as part of our district integration plan with the adult ed and the St. Clair Shores and Community and Development. So at the end of the day, our fund balance is projected to be $3.8 million if things hold. But again, obviously, we'll have some changes in June. And our fund balance currently looks like it's going to be 9.5%, which is a big improvement over 5.3%, which we had budgeted for in June. The big picture to look at here, so we've got a fund balance of 9.5%, which is still healthy, not quite double digits, but we're still out of the range of having to borrow for a state aid note. And because of all this huge federal stimulus money we received and we're going to receive coming up, we should be okay for cash flow purposes for this year and likely next year. And in total, we've lost about 450 students over the last 4 years. Now, this year we got a break. We only had recognized 25% of the loss. But if you take that into consideration, we still lost funding for 264 students. So if you take that times $8,529, which is our foundation allowance, we've lost about $2.3 million in state aid. And that's significant. And we've also, during those last 4 years, given out compensation increases to almost every employee in the district. So in light of all that, 9.5% is pretty sound in the district to sound fiscal management overall. So if anyone has any questions, I'm going to get into just a couple of the other funds, which are obligations of the general fund, but I'll be willing to take questions at this point.
I believe Mr. Ziegler.
Yep. Pete?
Yeah.
What was that loss of students? Was that the loss from the Chinese program?
That's part of it. Yes, that was 75 of it.
So only 75. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to move over here to adult ed fund. So the adult ed fund is the obligation of the general fund. Lakeshore Public Schools is fiscal agent for St. Clair Shores Adult and Community Ed. North Lake High School expenditures and revenues are also included in the fund here. So in terms of the big picture of this fund, so if we go down to the third column, toward the bottom, we're projecting a net income of about $47,000, which is pretty close to what we had back in June. Fund balance is a pretty healthy $264,000, which is impressive because of the fact that up until about a few years ago, the general fund had to subsidize the adult ed program to prevent it from going into deficit. So that's really a big improvement from where we've been a few years ago. In terms of the major changes from June, there's only two. So in local source revenue, that's down $428,000. Again, it's mostly a result of the Shores Child Care tuition going down significantly, and then trips and tours revenues and the youth enrichment program revenue going down. And then if we go down to community services, we see pretty much the corresponding decrease there that relates to the revenue up at the top. Everything else, though, is pretty similar. As I said, net income did not change significantly. And overall, that fund is doing pretty well. So any questions on the adult education fund? So
Go ahead, Pete.
do you want me to move? I'll move to food service next if I don't have any questions.
Yep, we're good.
Okay, so food service. So again, another fund that's the obligation of the general fund. And this fund was deeply affected by the COVID shutdown, obviously. So again, if we look at the big picture here, the total projected fund balance per the February amendment is $237,000. And that's pretty impressive considering we've had about a year and a half now of the shutdown. It's a 21% fund balance. And they've also been able to keep contributing $50,000 in indirect cost reimbursement to the general fund for central office costs. Again, we were not able to do that until a few years ago. So the fund is very much self-sustaining. As you see last year, despite the shutdown and the adversity, it still made $2,000 after the $50,000 transfer. So we're projecting a loss of $58,000. Again, it's mostly due to the drop of local source revenue of $553,000 due to in-person school lunch sales, a la carte sales, and catering revenue basically being non-existent. The federal COVID reimbursement has made up part of that loss. And we've also mitigated some of that with salaries and benefits being less than what we estimated because of fewer man hours due to the shutdown and curtailment of the program. So overall, the fund, again, is self-sustaining and in a pretty healthy environment. And by June, this could potentially be similar to where we were last year, about break even, which would be outstanding in light of all the adversity we've gone through here. So any questions on food service?
No, but I will say I'm not seeing everybody because of the screen share. So just shout out if there's a raised hand that I'm not being able to notice here. But I think we're good to go on, Pete.
Okay. So the last fund that is the obligation of the general fund is the international program. And as you know, the Chinese exchange program was suspended this year because of the travel restrictions due to COVID-19. So there's really not much to report. There's some minimal expenditures for maintenance and utilities and general upkeep just to keep Taylor Dorm functional in hopes that we'll get the program back next year or the year after, or maybe have an alternative use for the building itself. But really nothing much has changed, and we have still a fund balance that's a cushion in case we get the Chinese program back and want to spend some more to upgrade the facility. But that's pretty much it. I get to the other funds if anyone would like, or if anyone has, again, any general questions on any of the four funds that I've discussed, I'd be happy to take them.
All right, keep going.
Do you want me to go into the other funds, or do you want me to, because there's student school activity, there's a lot of these other bond funds, they're not really related, but they're more ancillary.
Because they fed into the reports that you've already provided?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, all right. Anybody want to hear specific details? Will you just read off what those funds are, Pete, so that they can have an opportunity to jump in?
Sure, the Student School Activity Fund, the 2014 Bond Refunding Fund, the 2016 Debt Fund, the 2009 Debt Fund, the 2017 Debt Fund, the 2009 Refunding Debt Fund, the 2019 Debt Fund, the 2016 Capital Project Fund, the 2017 Capital Project Fund. That's pretty much the others.
Okay, I do have a question. So let's just go to the 2009 fund because it's the oldest one. When would a fund wrap up and come off of our radar?
Well, the debt fund would come off when we stop the principal interest payments. The debt fund.
That's a debt fund one. Okay, yeah. I get it. All right.
I also didn't mention, I'm sorry, I missed, these are not all orders. So there's a building and site fund, obviously, which was amended, and the internal service fund, that's the other one that's being amended.
Okay. All right, anybody with questions? Okay. All right. All right, then I need a motion, please.
So moved. Colling.
Support DeLong.
Okay. Another chance for comments or questions here? All right, and a roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Thomas August,
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle,
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong,
Aye.
Mr. Colling,
Aye.
Mr. Densler,
Aye.
Mrs. Munger, aye, and Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Okay. Agenda item 7E, the bid award for auditorium lighting, video, and sound project. Dr. DePonio, please.
Thank you. Recommend the Lakeshore Board of Education approve the bid award to Shoreview Electric for the auditorium lighting, video, and sound project in the amount of $581,000 to be funded through bond funds.
Yeah, they're using advanced lighting and sound.
Can we get a motion, please?
So moved.
Okay, Mrs. DeLong, and support by,
Support Munger.
thank you. All right, anybody with comments or questions here?
Yeah, were these all closed bids?
They were. This project actually the call for bids and the collection of the bids occurred last March, I believe. And then of course COVID hit and everything stopped. We were fortunate enough to well, actually, I'm going to butcher all the wording here. So Brian, can you walk us through, or Wayne, or someone that can walk us through this without me?
Sure, no problem. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, we took bids actually back in May of 2020. They were closed bids. They were publicly advertised. And we had a pre-bid meeting and the normal process that we do for public funds.
Brian, excuse me for just a minute. I realize that some people watching tonight may not know who you are. So
I'm sorry.
Milhack is with Wakely and Associates and has a long history of doing work with us at Lakeshore Schools. There you go, Brian.
Hello. So the project is for basically a large total remodel of the auditorium. We're putting in a new sound system, new video system, a new lighting system, including house lights, stage lights, new controls, new wiring. It's a very expensive project. And since it was bid way back, a year ago, basically, we're coming up of almost a year. In talking with Shoreview Electric, they will honor their price, but as I stated in the recommendation letter, the stipulation is that the work would take place in the fall. It will not be a summer project. Right now, the contractors are so loaded up with work right now. There's no way they can get to the project in the summer months. So it's a great project. It's basically an indoor project that we call it. So they'll honor their price from back in May. If they will be working on the project during the fall, September, October, November. Hopefully we'll have it ready for Christmas time. That's the goal.
All right. Any additional questions?
Was that the lowest bid out of the pack?
Yes, it was. They were the low bidder out of the bids that were received.
Impressive that they're not, with the price of everything going up as it has. I'm glad they're keeping to their contract.
Yeah, that was very actually it was surprising to me, but they've done work in a lot of K-12 areas. They've done work in this district as well. And they're a great contractor, very familiar with this type of work. And again, it just fit them pretty good. If we let them go into the fall, then it's a great fall project. It's getting into colder weather. It's a great indoor project for them. So they will honor their bid and hold their price.
Anybody else? Okay, so I will mention here before we get to our roll call vote that I will be abstaining. This happens to be my husband's employer in my family's business. And we really don't discuss Lakeshore schools in the family business. And I have no idea what the rationale was, but I would like to think that it has a little something to do with them all being Lakeshore graduates. So with that, Ms. Munger, go ahead with the roll call vote, please.
Okay, let me switch screens here. Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mrs. Munger, aye. Mrs. Bartle.
Abstain.
Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
Mr. Colling.
Aye.
Mr. Densler.
Aye.
And Mrs. Thomas August.
Aye.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Brian. All right, agenda item 7F, the confirmation of COVID-19 learning plan for the 2021 school year. Ms. Weinkoop.
This will be very anticlimactic after Dr. DePonio's long explanation during his superintendent report. But we are recommending a motion to approve the reconfirmation of the COVID preparedness and response plan as presented. And as indicated by Dr. DePonio, I will just highlight what the changes are in the document. The move that we are requesting to combine cohorts still keeps us technically in a hybrid situation since we are still having remote days on Monday. So that doesn't change the way it is being delivered. However, there is a note in the additional comments for K through 5, 6 through 8, and Lakeshore High School that at beginning 3/8/21, students choosing in-person attend 4 days per week for a modified full day of instruction. As Dr. DePonio indicated, the recommendation and request is still that the hour release at the end of the day stay in place and that Mondays students are remote with asynchronous, synchronous, and educational hard copy materials for learning activities as assigned by the teachers. It should also be noted that Northlake High School students are already attending in-person 5 days a week for a modified full day of instruction. Those students, we know that we have smaller class sizes to begin with, and then similar to the rest of our population, about 50% is still remote. So they were able, with social distancing and safety protocols in place, to continue all that and bring in all of the in-person students. So they have been full in-person 5 days a week since the start of their semester, which was just 2 weeks ago. The last thing that we have to update is the two-way interaction rates. You will note that instead of having 4 weeks, they're broken down into 2 periods. Weeks 18 and 19 are together and weeks 19 and 20 are together. That is because the way we report two-way communication, the legislature is requiring it in those pupil accounting windows, which is a Wednesday through Tuesday. And as you well know, we don't end semesters on Wednesday or Tuesdays and begin them on Wednesdays. So that represented a challenge for counting two-way communication, which is why we broke the weeks up in that way to address the end of a semester, staying with one group of teachers responsible for that two-way communication, and the beginning of a new semester, that half of the week going with the new assignments, because at the secondary level, there's quite a bit of movement between that. And we did have some students at the elementary level go between virtual and hybrid in person. So that represented a change for them also. You will note that we continue to stay above the 90% mark, even with those challenges. So weeks 18 and the first half of week 19, we have a 92% two-way communication rate. Weeks 19 and 20, we have a 91% of students that had two-way communication with their teachers.
All right. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved. Densler.
Support, Munger.
Okay. All right, and opportunity for questions or comments.
Yeah, I'd like to just jump in for a second. I was saving my comments since we peppered Dr. DePonio with enough things at the beginning of the meeting. But as I mentioned on the last call, you know, I've been one of the voices on the board that has been most cautious and adverse to returning to in-person instruction, and that's not a decision that any of us take lightly. But like we've talked about, this has been a gradual and consistent journey for us, and I do support the district's recommendation that the time is right for us to return to at least this 4 day a week in-person schedule. We've heard from Dr. DePonio and the experts that our COVID case rates are on a declining trend and are very low. You know, there was the CDC study released about the lack of transmission that you might expect from being in person, and that it can be done safely with masks and appropriate sanitization. And it's a great reassurance to me too when Dr. DePonio says things like, you know, if we have staff members that have, you know, specific concerns, that we're willing to address those. So I do, just as one of the voices on the board that has been most vocal for towards the virtual options, that I do think that the time is right. I think the district has taken the necessary steps to prepare us for this, and that we're making the best decision we can for our students based off of the objective data in science that is out there. So I did just want to be clear that I support this decision, and I thank everyone that's participated on our committees and our teachers and staff, and thank everyone that called in or wrote letters for Mr. Shaheen to read. That we do greatly appreciate your perspective and opinion, and that it is very important to us to hear that, and we do take it into great consideration as we make decisions like this. So I just wanted to say those couple things, and that's it. I'll turn it back over to you, Mrs. Bartle. Thanks.
All right. Anybody else like to make comment? Okay. I actually do have a question about the reporting rate. Do we know what the rest of the state, or, you know, the county or other districts are able to report in terms of those student contacts? Because I'm pretty impressed with numbers at 91 and 92%.
Yeah, maybe Dr. DePonio knows numbers. I know it's part of transparency, so it's posted on everybody's website once a month. But I have not looked. Anecdotally, I would say the 80 percentile, in the 80s, is probably for some of our surrounding, is probably more typical. The two-way communication follows pupil accounting rules that apply to virtual instruction. So that two-way communication can be attending synchronous, but it also can be interaction between the teacher and the student in other ways. So it's important to note that even while we have a segment of students that struggle with virtual, and that we struggle to have them connected and in, over 90% twice a week are in some way connecting with their classes and with their teachers. So they're attending synchronous lessons, they are posting in forums, they are submitting material, they are reaching out and responding to messages from their teachers, or reaching out to their teachers for messages. So in some ways, it's even a more personal connection than maybe they would have at other times.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you very much. Anybody else before we? Okay, Ms. Munger, roll call vote. I think you're muted, Liz.
I turned my camera on and I turned my mic off. Okay. Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mr. Colling.
Aye.
Mrs. Thomas August.
Aye.
Mr. Densler.
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle.
Aye.
And Mrs. Munger, aye.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I know that was a lot of information shared, studied, read, researched, and probably a good amount of heartache in there too on just getting to make the local decision. So thank you for your willingness to carry that burden, because it is a burden. It's not easy all the time. So thank you. All right, item 7G is the Kennedy Middle School 8th grade band field trip request. Ms. Weinkoop.
Can I just say that I'm so excited that this to me represents the first time in a year, something that feels like planning ahead and a return to student normalcy with our instructional practices. So with that being said, the recommendation is to move to approve the KMS 8th grade band field trip request to Chicago. Please note this is for March 2022, so it is a year ahead, which is about right for planning trips. Part of the reason that they are requesting so far ahead is that the trip that was approved for 2020, Bright Spark Travel, said that they would keep the same itinerary and rates as long as we locked it in early enough for this year. So it is the same trip that was already approved at that same rate. The only change that's been made is that they noted that since COVID is now a known entity, if for some reason a pandemic spike happened that was related to it without insurance, we would not be given our money back or be able to cancel. So one of the requirements was the students will have to have, that will be part of the package, that we have the cancellation. Otherwise, it is the same trip that was approved for last year that our students were not able to attend.
All right, we'll get a motion.
So moved. Munger.
Okay.
Support DeLong.
Thank you. So Munger and DeLong. And time for discussion. I do have a question, and nothing about this specific company, but in more of a general context of world events. It's been a very difficult year for businesses, and then certainly, you know, one in the travel business has been especially hurt, I'm sure. So is there any part of that insurance policy that covers us in the event that the business is no longer operational?
That is a great question, and I do not know the answer to that, but I can look into that and get you that answer.
Okay, and if it's an option, maybe not one that was already presented, but maybe we should look at that as an option, or at least assess when we make payments and so forth. Okay, all right, thank you. Anybody else with questions or comments on this? All right, roll call again, please.
Mr. Colling.
Aye.
Mrs. Thomas August.
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
Oh, Mr. Densler.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle.
Aye.
And Mrs. Munger. Aye.
All right, thank you. That is something to look forward to. Agenda item 7H is the 2021 MASB Board of Directors election. We are looking to cast a ballot on behalf of Lakeshore Public Schools to the MASB. We have 4 candidates that are up for a 3-year term to represent our region to the MASB, which is the Michigan Association of School Boards. And the candidates are, and I may not pronounce these names accurately, but Sandra Dookie from Ferndale Public Schools, Mary Hasner from Oxford Community Schools, Bridget McQuiston, Lake Orion Community Schools, and Gina Walker, New Haven Community Schools. Would someone like to make a motion in favor of one of the 4 candidates to serve as the Region 8 representative?
I move to nominate Mary Hanser for our vote for MASB Board of Directors.
Okay. Any support for that? Okay, if we fail to have support, we just don't make a vote on that. The motion dies if there's no support.
Support, Colin.
All right, support by Mr. Colling. And with that, any questions or comments before we vote?
I can explain a little bit of my rationale of why I selected Mary. You know, as most people on, you know, as the folks on this board know, I have been pretty involved in MASB. I thought I was going to appear on this ballot, and I missed the submission deadline by a few hours, and unfortunately didn't get my picture in the booklet here. But I know I think I've met all four of these folks, at least a handful of them. But I've had a couple of in-depth conversations with Mary, and I've been impressed with her perspective and energy. I think she's got a great focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I personally was between her and Sandra. What led me towards Mary is that in just her 2 years, she has both the Certified Board Member Award and Award of Merit. So it's the level 1 and level 2 certification. Sandra didn't have any certifications, and she's not a familiar face to me, whereas Mary is. I know I've seen Mary at functions, so you know, she's new on the board, so I think brings this fresh perspective. Like I said, she's got a lot of energy and a lot of passion, strong focus on diversity and inclusion, which I think is really important to MASB right now, and has seemed to really jump in at the organization. So from my interactions with these folks, I don't think there's a bad choice on the list, but I've met Mary a handful of times and have been impressed with her energy and with her perspective, and I think she'd be a great addition to that team.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that, Josh. Anything else? All right, roll call again, Ms. Munger.
All righty, Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mrs. Thomas August.
Aye.
Mrs. Munger, aye. Mr. Densler.
Aye.
Mr. Colling.
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
And Mrs. Bartle.
Aye. All right. And we're getting there. Agenda item 8A is board commentary, and let's jump in with Mr. Colling.
All right, thank you. You know, I feel like I had a lot to say, and then Josh literally said every word of what I wanted to say in regards to our vote to combine cohorts tonight. Quite literally, I was going to say it's not a vote that any of us take lightly. And I appreciate Josh for articulating my comments probably a lot better than I could. So thank you, Josh, for that. But, you know, what I keep coming back to is since the start of this process and what we've done involving our community, I've really been able to have full faith in our staff, our administration, the leadership of Dr. DePonio to do what's best at the right time for our students and for our teachers and for our staff in general. And that faith has not been shaken by this. It's only been strengthened by the actions that we've taken. It's been expressed several times during this meeting that people believe that Lakeshore has done everything right up to this point. And I believe that this action that we've taken tonight continues on that trajectory. I do believe that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and if we keep moving towards it, we'll reach it. So I appreciate all the hard work and effort that's gone into making this moment possible so that we can get back to some semblance of normalcy down the road in a way that is safe and that balances out, of course, the great educational needs of our students. So that said, I appreciate everyone. And on a lighter note, I do have some updates from the foundation. There weren't any grants this month, except for one coming in to the foundation from DTE's Community Foundation. So thank you, I believe, to Josh, whose advocacy allows the foundation to receive that grant each year, which I believe is a part of a matching program. Josh can correct me if I'm wrong. But other than that, they are still accepting applicants. The foundation is, I should say, for scholarships for a Lakeshore High School senior and a North Lake senior as well. So if you're out there and that pertains to you, please keep that on your radar. I'm not sure exactly when the deadline is, but you can get in touch with, I'm sure, any of the counselors or Jack Dick for more information. So thank you, everyone, and have a great night.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Thomas August.
Hello. I just wanted to share that I believe Lakeshore is moving in the correct direction with having the cohorts join, and I have confidence in the administration and the teachers and the entire staff on making sure that it's a safe environment for both the students and everyone who was working there. And on a lighter note, I just wanted to give a little extra appreciation to the bus drivers of Lakeshore. It is National Bus Driver Appreciation Day today. So I just wanted to give a little appreciation to them.
All right. Mrs. DeLong.
Hello. I too feel that we are moving in the right direction. When we look at the date, March 8th is when we're starting to bring students back full time. That's almost a year that they have been out of school full time. I think it's time. I'm encouraged by the numbers that things are decreasing. I by no means feel that COVID is going to suddenly magically go away. I think this is something we're going to live with for a while. And everybody needs to get back to some sort of normalcy. So I think we're moving in the right direction. And I know that we would not be doing this unless we had all the safety measures in place. So I think this is good. And I know most of the people I've talked to, they have been wanting this to get back to something normal. So I think this is great. I too want to give a shout out to the bus drivers because they have been doing an excellent job in getting our bowlers to the meets. So I truly appreciate them making them arrive there safely and on time. And appreciation to all the administration and staff on your special day. You certainly deserve more than a day for what you've been through this year. Joe, it's been a year for you. So I appreciate everybody's efforts, and I'm looking forward to warmer weather soon, I hope. So thank you and have a good evening.
All right. Mr. Densler.
Alrighty, I will be quick. First, I apologize for the intermittency of my camera being on. Anyone who is a frequent flyer with the virtual board meetings here knows that my technology just doesn't like Google Meet. And so in order to preserve my ability to see and respond to my colleagues here on the board, I did turn that off because it was just causing more harm than good. I will also just thank on behalf of the district, the DTE Foundation. I believe this grant was actually, this particular one was provided by our foundation through our regional relations team. So Stephanie Barris is a colleague of mine who supports the governmental agencies, municipalities within Macomb County. And she did help us to connect or collect this grant. And DTE is very generous in that for every year I serve on the board, they will also provide a $1,000 grant to the foundation. And Dan's comments reminded me that I have to put in that application for 2021 now that the year's turned over, and I'll definitely be doing that. And then my final comment is just towards our staff. And I first of all, I want to thank everyone that called in or submitted comments for the meeting today. But I just want to give another special message of appreciation to our staff. I know there were concerns and there's fatigue and things going on in general, and then concerns with these cohorts. And I just want you guys to know how grateful we all are. I don't want to speak on behalf of the board, but I know that I can in saying that we're all grateful. We just love you so much, and we have your back. We've got your back, and we're here for you, and we're going to get through this together. So thank you to all of our educators and our staff, our administrators with Administrators Week coming up, everyone that's just doing everything they can to keep the ship moving. We're going to get through it, and we're going to be okay. So thank you. Stay safe and stay well. Have a great night, and that's all that I have.
All right, Mrs. Munger.
Well, good evening. Thank you to our administrators. It's the power of their leadership that has gotten us through this year. And so kudos and thank you to our administrators. You help make Lakeshore. And then we go one more down to our teachers. Congratulations to the teachers of the year, our tenured teacher, our new teachers coming in. You're what makes Shorean Nation. You're the strength of our Shorean Nation. And then to one of my favorite awards, the Slurpee Student Awards were announced today for this month of February. And the best thing is some of the categories of nomination: perseverance, optimism, enthusiasm, kindness, love of learning, integrity. Those are wonderful, wonderful attributes to all of our Shorean students, staff, and administration. So thank you. Have a great night. And don't forget, if you do need help, contact our central office. They are there to help families, staff. So please don't forget to reach out if you need help. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Ziegler.
Okay, everybody kind of covered a lot of it, so I want to thank the administrators too, the bus drivers, Mr. Warren on your tenure, the new teachers, welcome to the Lakeshore family, teachers of the year, congratulations. Pete, nice job on the budget and the amendments. Very easy to go through and read. And Mr. Shaheen, thank you for the letters that you brought to us. They're well received, and like Josh said, we take everything serious. So that's it. I'm glad everything's going in the right direction, and thanks to all the hard work from all of you and the teachers and the maintenance and bus drivers. Thank you for everything. You guys have done a great job.
All right. I think I'm going to be a little bit scattered because I don't want to be too redundant, and my counterparts have spoken very well tonight. So I'm going to not be too redundant if I can. First off, before I really jump in, will Joe or Shannon share that email address for help via Lakeshore? The dedicated email address?
COVID-19 help at lsps.org.
Okay.
COVID-19 help at lsps.org.
All right. Thank you. I know there was, really anything and everything hitting that email. And so whatever your needs are, please don't hesitate to let us know, and we will certainly do our best to help you. A couple of things. Going back to welcoming our new staff members, I should have noticed this at the time. I didn't, but Lexi, I'm going to call her instead of Lexis. Lexis Spanik is also a Lakeshore graduate, and I've not heard her called Lexis, only Lexi all these years. So congratulations to employment of Lexi as well. And most of us probably remember her name because she was often mentioned as part of our trap team, trap shooting at the high school a few years back. So just wanted to clarify that. Skip that. We've covered that one. Spelling Bee champions. I really never have words for the Spelling Bee champions because I'm the girl that is constantly relying on Google for spelling and, talking to the devices about how do you spell this, how do you spell that. So these kids that can spell amaze me. And I know that this year's competition went really long and hard. I believe it was at the middle school that went like 10 rounds before one of the finalists actually was knocked out. So pretty amazing stuff. And I just want to mention those kids by name. So 5th grader Lilith Smith was announced the champion of Violet Elementary Spelling Bee. Matthew DeBover Sallow was announced the champion of the Rogers Spelling Bee. And Glenn Vasily was announced the champion at Kennedy Middle School. And they will be joining Isabella Pupa from Masonic Heights Elementary and moving on to the Macomb Regional Spelling Bee, which is held on Sunday, March 7th. So very impressive. I'm in awe because that was my weakness. So congratulations to all of them, and we wish you well in March as you compete at the next step. As soon as the governor allows, these board meetings will also be in person. We have been under the directive of the governor that we would not be having in-person meetings at this point in time. So as soon as that's permissible, you will see us in person, and we look forward to seeing you in person as well. I just wanted to be clear about that this was not a decision of this Board of Education. It is something that was a directive to us. On a more cheerful note, it's really good to see some of the creativity in Lakeshore schools. So some schools that have, resorted to 100% online or whatever their mode of operation is, that has really wiped out some of the student activity aspect of education. And I am super proud that Lakeshore has not done that. And I don't know who's behind the creativity in these ideas, but there's a lot of things still going on in our district. And so I would encourage you to check out our website to stay abreast of those things coming up. But specifically, I saw the certificates of Shorian Love actually as I was out and about in the community. And I'm like, I recognize that right there, that red carnation there, that certificate over there. So good to see those in the community, and you can see them on our website too, and certainly try to recognize them as you, frequent their businesses in our community, because they do so much for us. Photorama is this weekend, the 27th. And is that only a student-based activity? No. So I can play? All right. I wasn't really clear in looking at the website if I had to be a student. So it really is a community-based activity? Awesome. Okay, check out the webpage for Lakeshore Schools and look up Photorama on the 27th. It looks like a socially distanced, safe way to have some fun. So let's do that. Also, the virtual talent show is coming up, and I'm not sure what the date of the deadline is. It said February, but I don't know if it meant the end of the month of February. So I think there's probably still room to get that in, get your entries in, but there's more information about the virtual talent show also on the website. And then the actual talent show demonstration presentation will be in April. So another thing to look forward to. And then lastly, for me, it is open enrollment time. So hopefully if you have any, friends or neighbors, because it is not just school of choice, but in district as well, to start thinking about enrollment time. So open enrollment for Lakeshore Public Schools. Make sure that your friends, neighbors, family, whoever you know that might be looking for a solid education for their kids, at least let them consider Lakeshore. I think once they consider us, we can sell ourselves. So bring them to us and we'll do the rest. I believe I've covered everything, and we are going to move to a call for executive session to discuss negotiations, and I do need a motion for that.
So moved. Support, Munger.
All right, DeLong and Munger. And anybody have a question about that before we vote? All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Thomas August.
Aye.
Mr. Colling.
Aye.
Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler.
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle.
Aye.
Mr. Denzler.
Aye.
And Mrs. Munger. Aye.
All right, we are going to take just about a 2-minute break, but before we do that, I want to thank anybody who has hung out with us this far. Our board meetings generally don't go this long, but there was a lot on our agenda today, and some really good conversation too. So if you've hung out with us, we appreciate that, and we will take a 2-minute break, reconvene into closed session, and for anyone that wants to follow, we do come out of closed session before actually adjourning the meeting at the end of the night. So you can hang out and see when we return, or if we're parting ways, you have a great evening and we appreciate your time. All right, 2 minutes, everybody.
I love watching all the screens go blank. That was fun.
All right, I'll be right back.
Brian, Andrew, I don't know if you guys are
Well,
Andrew, Brian, can you guys give us a ETA as to? You there?
If we all just hang up and go to bed, like, what's the worst that could happen?
Andrew, Brian, can you guys?
We follow the rules.
Give us a ETA.
We're
All right, we're good.
We're on. All right, everybody. We are out of closed session and I need a motion to return to open session.
So moved.
Support.
All right, DeLong and I'm sorry. Dan,
It was
right?
me, Dan.
Thank you. Okay, vote Liz.
Mr. Colling,
Aye.
Mr. Densler,
Yup.
Mrs. Munger, aye. Mrs. Thomas August,
Aye.
Mr. Ziegler,
Aye.
Mrs. Bartle,
Aye.
and Mrs. DeLong.
Aye.
All right. And unless somebody has something to add, we'll take a motion to adjourn.
So
moved.
moved. Support.
Motion by all, supported by all, and we will not do a roll call vote, just all in favor.
Aye.
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 All right. Thank you, everybody. I know it was a long night. Thank you so much. Sleep well.
Aye. Good night, everyone. Aye.
Bye.